There's an invisible line separating those who build empires from those who watch them rise. It's not talent, resources, or timing. It's something far more fundamental. What separates peak performers from everyone else in high-pressure moments? Watch how elite negotiators operate, and you'll notice something strange. They're never the loudest in the room. They're not the most aggressive or the most charismatic, but they consistently win. Why? Because while everyone else is reacting emotionally, they're reading the room with surgical precision. They've trained their minds to stay calm when pressure spikes. That's not a personality trait. That's mental discipline applied in real time. And it gives them an advantage that no strategy or tactic can replicate. Think about the last time you made a decision under stress. How did it turn out? Chances are, not great. Because stress floods your system with impulses that override clear thinking. You react instead of respond. You choose what feels urgent instead of what matters. This pattern shows up everywhere in business deals that fall apart, in investments that tank, in relationships that crumble. The common thread? Loss of internal control at the critical moment. High performance isn't about having the perfect plan. It's about executing any plan with a mind that doesn't betray you when it counts. Military strategists understood this centuries ago. Battles weren't won by the side with more soldiers. They were won by commanders who maintained clarity when chaos erupted. While their opponents panicked and made reactive decisions, they stayed cold, calculated. They saw patterns emerging on the battlefield that others missed because those others were too busy being overwhelmed. This principle hasn't changed. The battlefield moved from physical terrain to boardrooms, trading floors, and competitive markets. But the dynamic remains identical. Whoever controls their mind controls the outcome. Now look at your own patterns. How often do you lose opportunities? Not because you lack skill, but because your mind was scattered. How many times have you known exactly what to do, but didn't do it because fear, doubt, or distraction took over? That gap between knowing and doing, that's where most people lose. And it's not an information problem. It's a control problem. You already have enough knowledge to be far ahead of where you are. What's missing is the mental framework to execute consistently, regardless of how you feel in the moment. The people operating at the highest levels aren't smarter than you. They've just built stronger internal systems. Systems that don't negotiate with weakness. Systems that maintain focus when everything screams for distraction. And that's exactly what we're breaking down next. How impulse control became the most valuable skill nobody's teaching. Here's what most people miss about success. It's not the big decisions that destroy you. It's the 1,000 small impulses you don't control. That notification you couldn't ignore. That conversation you let drag on. That thought spiral you fed until it consumed your entire afternoon. Each one feels insignificant, but they compound. By the end of the week, you've lost hours. By the end of the month, you've lost momentum. By the end of the year, you're wondering why nothing changed. The answer is simple. You never had control. Athletes know this better than anyone. Watch an elite performer in the final moments of competition. Their body is screaming to quit. Their mind is throwing up every excuse to play it safe. But they execute anyway. Not because they're tougher, because they've trained their nervous system to obey commands even under maximum stress. That's not willpower. Willpower runs out. This is architecture. It's a mental operating system that doesn't depend on how you feel. It just runs. And the gap between amateurs and professionals lives entirely in that system. Now think about your own execution rate. How often do you start strong and fade? How many projects did you abandon not because they were bad ideas, but because you couldn't maintain focus long enough to see results? This is the modern epidemic. Everyone has access to information. Everyone knows what works. But almost nobody can execute consistently because their minds are fractured, pulled in 1,000 directions by engineered distractions designed to hijack attention. If you're not actively building impulse control, you're getting worse at it. Because the default environment is optimized to make you reactive, not strategic. Financial decisions expose this immediately. People lose money not from bad information, but from bad impulse management. They buy at the top because everyone else is excited. They sell at the bottom because fear takes over. The strategy was sound. The information was there. But when it came time to execute, emotion hijacked reason. And the result is always the same: loss, frustration. Another story of almost worked out, except it never almost works. Either you control your impulses, or your impulses control your outcomes. Drop a comment if this is landing for you. Why clarity under pressure is your only real competitive edge. There's a hierarchy in every high-stakes environment, and it's not determined by who works the longest hours or who has the most impressive resume. It's determined by who maintains mental clarity when everyone else is operating in survival mode. Clarity isn't just knowing what to do, it's seeing what others can't see because they're too busy reacting. While most people are drowning in manufactured urgencies, those with clarity identify what actually moves the needle and act on it. That's not privilege. That's the result of a mind trained to filter noise. Investigators operate this way. They don't get seduced by the obvious evidence. They observe patterns. They connect dots that appear unrelated. And they do this because their minds aren't contaminated by emotional bias or external pressure. They process information cleanly, without rushing, without needing immediate validation. And that analytical patience reveals truths others never see. The same principle applies everywhere. If you can maintain clarity while others panic, you're already ahead. Not because you're smarter, because you're not compromised. Think about decisions you've made under pressure. How many were good? Probably not many, because pressure without clarity generates bad decisions. Always, you react instead of respond. You take the fastest path instead of the smartest one. Then you deal with consequences. Now think about decisions you made with time, with a calm mind, processing all variables. Those were better, right? Not because you had more information, because you had clarity to process the information you already had. This explains why some people build fortunes while others, with identical opportunities, lose everything. It's not access, it's clarity. When your mind is clouded by greed, fear, or ego, you make decisions that seem right in the moment, but reveal themselves as disasters later. Mental clarity protects you from this. It gives you the ability to see beyond the obvious, to anticipate consequences, to avoid traps others fall into repeatedly, and over time, that compounds into massive advantage. If this content is helping you level up, hit the like button. It helps the channel keep delivering deep analysis on high performance and strategic mindset. What ancient systems knew about self-mastery that we forgot? Every ancient code of excellence pointed to the same core truth. External circumstances are chaos, but internal territory can be controlled. The Stoics didn't talk about motivation. They talked about dominion over thought, control over reaction, sovereignty over what you allow into your mind. They understood that the world will test you relentlessly, and if you don't govern yourself, the world governs you. That philosophy wasn't abstract. It was practical survival wisdom for navigating a brutal, unpredictable reality. And it's even more relevant now. Look at the patterns across different disciplines. Samurai cultivated emotional detachment not to be cold, but to maintain precision in combat. One moment of emotional flooding meant death. Master negotiators deployed the same principle. They don't let ego, excitement, or fear distort their perception of the situation. They stay clear, and that clarity lets them see angles others miss. Strategic advantage doesn't come from being more aggressive. It comes from being less compromised internally. Now examine your own life through this lens. How much of your behavior is actually yours? And how much is just automatic reaction to stimuli? Someone says something that triggers you, and you snap. A challenge appears, and you avoid it. An opportunity requires patience, and you quit early. None of that is choice. That's programming. And until you interrupt that programming with conscious self-governance, you're not operating. You're being operated. The environment is running you, not the other way around. This is why most people plateau. They're not limited by circumstances. They're limited by their inability to govern their own minds under pressure. You could give them every advantage: capital, connections, knowledge, and they'd still find a way to sabotage themselves. Because without internal control, external resources are wasted. It's like pouring water into a cracked vessel. Doesn't matter how much you pour in. It's all leaking out through lack of discipline, focus, and mental fortitude. The shift happens when you stop looking for external solutions to an internal problem. When you realize that everything you need to change is happening between your ears. That's not limiting. That's liberating. Because it means you're not dependent on anything outside yourself to start winning. How to build the internal system that doesn't break under fire. Here's the truth most people avoid. You already have what you need. The problem isn't resources, opportunities, or information. The problem is you haven't built the internal architecture to capitalize on what's already available. And that architecture isn't built by consuming more content. It's built through deliberate practice of the hardest thing humans do, sitting with discomfort without escaping, maintaining focus when it's boring, choosing the difficult path when the easy one is right there. Those are the reps that build mental sovereignty. Think about how much time you spend training your mind versus training anything else. Most people spend hours on physical fitness, skill development, networking, but zero time on impulse regulation, tension management, or emotional control. Then they wonder why they keep self-sabotaging, why they know what to do but don't do it, why they start strong and fade. The answer is always the same. No internal system, just motivation, which is gasoline burns hot and runs out fast. What you need is structure, a mental operating system that functions regardless of how you feel. Elite performers understand this instinctively. They don't rely on inspiration. They've built routines, triggers, and protocols that execute automatically. When pressure hits, they don't have to think. The system takes over. That's not robotic. That's freedom. Freedom from being hijacked by fear, distraction, or doubt at the moment it matters most. You build that system the same way you build anything worthwhile, through consistent, unglamorous repetition of fundamentals. Daily practice of focus. Daily practice of impulse delay. Daily practice of choosing strategic over comfortable. The gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't knowledge. It's execution. And execution requires a mind that obeys the environment. That stays sharp when everything is boring. That maintains discipline when nobody's watching. That operates with clarity when pressure spikes. Build that, and everything else becomes easier. Not because the external challenges disappear, but because you're no longer your own biggest obstacle. If this video shifted something for you, subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Comment below and tell me which part hit hardest.